Welcome to ReLAWtionship, where real-life couple Justin and Candise share their keeping it real perspective on the ins and outs of their personal and professional experiences, navigating the ups and downs of partnerships in life and business. They will also offer practical advice for maintaining strong, healthy, fun, and successful relationships in life and business. If you're ready for comedic and insightful exploration of life, love, law, business, and everything else in between, you're in the right place. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Here are your hosts, Justin and Candise.
Welcome to ReLAWtionship. Today, we're excited to have Rebecca and Jason Miller, the power couple behind Peggy Jean's Pies, a family-owned pie business that's gained national recognition. Awesome. Rebecca, a lawyer turned entrepreneur, started baking pies with her mom for fun, and it eventually led to the creation of Peggy Jean's Pies. Jason, a true Missourian at heart, has an impressive career in HR and project management before joining the family business as the Chief Operations Officer, COO. Together, they've juggled the demands of running a successful business while raising their two children. Welcome to the show, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. We feel very honored.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to, kind of give the audience just a little bit of a tidbit that we were talking to you guys. I'm very excited for this because, oftentimes when you interview people that you've never met before, it can get a little nerve-wracking. And so I always kind of have like a brief 1 to 2 minute conversation with my guests before because I kind of want to loosen them up. But I'm so excited for this because you guys are totally my jam, and you are willing to unleash and, go there and indulge us in going there and being super real. Why
do I feel like Jason and I are going to be in the doghouse after this show?
I know.
You guys are not going to be in the doghouse after this. We promise. Okay, although my fingers are. So
I doubt it.
Yeah. So let's jump in. First, obviously, I want to know, and I want you guys to tell the audience a little bit about yourselves and kind of your journey in your prior careers and then, what led you to the creation of your company now.
Okay. Well, gosh, we met in college. So like 1,000 years ago, we met in a class because I loved poli-sci and international relations, and he hated it. And this is like back in the day when you had to they made us go get the New York Times every single day. And then you had to physically cut out articles that you had to turn in in a book. So this is dark ages. So I love the kind of thing. I'm like a super nerd. He didn't cut out one thing for a whole semester. So one of the first times he ever was like, you want to go on a date? We could cut all of these things out. That's literally out of that class, there was 14 people in that class and 3 couples got married. Yeah. So apparently not cutting out things out of newspapers.
What are they serving in that cafeteria there?
I don't know, and I don't ever know what happened to that professor. Yeah. But yeah, apparently that's the way to get dates is don't cut out things in the 90s. And then some girl will take pity on you and help you cut articles for 5 hours. So gosh, we dated for a long time in college and then got married when I started law school. So he pretty much supported us, got me through law school. And as anyone who is married to somebody in law school knows, that's like a 2-for-1 degree because somebody's got to quiz you on the flashcards. Someone's got to sit there while you make all the outlines. Someone's got to stress after you got called on in evidence and you didn't know the answer and you're crying. That's a 2-for-1 sort of deal.
Turns out I like accounting law.
Gold star, let me tell you. And it's not easy. Because you know what? When you're so stressed out and at the height of all emotions, comes irrational, sensitive, heightened emotional behavior. So.
And then, you spend all this money and time on it. And I just remember going to take the bar exam. And, I don't think there's a person in the world that walks out of the bar and they're like, man, killed it. Can't wait to start practicing. Everyone's like, well, that was a disaster. So I come home, I'm crying. I'm like, there is no way I'm going to pass. Oh, and I was 8.5 months pregnant with our first child when I took the bar. So we already don't really have any money. We need me to practice. We're going to have a kid. And I'm crying. There's no way.
There was a lot of stress at that time.
So that the year that I took the bar was the first year Missouri Bar put the results online. And I'll never forget. It's like, that webpage comes up, and remember how slow things used to load? And there's all the people that took it, and I'm scrolling through, and we were at the original Peggy Jeans, and I was in my mom's office, and he was downstairs. And I remember coming down, and I was like yelling that I had passed, but booking, my mom thought my water had broke. So for like this one whole minute thing, there was like this complete confusion, like, why are we all yelling? And like, I'm like, no, I passed. So I called my doctor because I was supposed to be
did you pass the child or did you pass the exam?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be asking that question.
Yeah, so I was supposed to be induced the day they were going to do the swearing in. So I called my doctor, and I'm like, I can't go be induced. Like, I have spent way too long. I'm going to take myself down to the state capitol and get sworn in. And she was like, I respect that. Like, I can't guarantee you're not going to have the baby before then. And I just remember, like, we were so young and stupid. Like, I didn't want to buy maternity pantyhose. So I just bought some queen size pantyhose, which, as you know, like, just roll down to your knees like a tourniquet by the time you walk around in them when they're too tight. So I just remember, like, going down there, and then we had him the next day.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I feel like he wanted to hold all in. Suits his personality now. He's 20. Suits him. He's like, yeah, he's like, I was here for the whole law school experience. I went to the bar, staying in for the swearing in.
So does he want to be a lawyer?
No. He
really is into psychology and history.
But he works here. I mean, it's very interesting to see what our kids are going to do, I think, because now they both work here. He's a sophomore at the zoo. Our daughter's a junior in high school. But so anyway, like we started having a life. Like, I started as assistant attorney general for the state of Missouri. He's building his career. So my mom is the Jean, and her best friend was Peggy. They own this from 1994 to 2004. So we're talking the whole sort of span of when we're meeting in college, we're getting married, we're young. I never worked there once. Like, I look back on that now, I'm like, that's so weird considering our kids work here, but it just never occurred to me to work there. And Peg was a lot older than my mom. So she was really like a grandma to me and to Jason. Yeah. And she got sick really suddenly. And so we were living in Kansas City, get pregnant with Hayden, graduate from law school, move back here. And then I kind of see like mom is just circling the drain. Like, she is not holding it together well because she's helping Peg's husband care for Peg. She is running what they have now grown into a huge business. It had been like on Southern Living magazine. They serve breakfast. They serve lunch. Al Roker came for that show that he had done. So they had done this whole thing. She's got all these people on staff. She's trying to hold it all together. And by nature, she's a super ADHD sort of bipolar person. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just kind of looked at her and I'm like, I think you're either we're gonna have to figure out something, or you're gonna have to quit. Like, you are not in a good space. And she was like, I'm done. So she literally puts a sign on the door, like, close. And that was really it. And Peg passed. She helped care for Peg, and Peg passed away the next year, the day before our daughter was born. Okay. And then we had like a normal life. Like, mom eventually ended up remarrying. My parents divorced when I was 3. So now I'm in my mid 30s. She remarries. She moves away. He's working. I'm now working for a company that does a super boring kind of law, but I could work from home, which was great for our kids. And so mom would come every week. She lived about an hour and a half away, and she'd come on Wednesdays, and we'd kind of shop during the day, and then she'd spend the night, see our kids and all that. And people would just see her everywhere around town and be like, oh my gosh, it's the Peggy Jeans lady. They're like, will you make me a chocolate bourbon pecan pie in your house, and I'll just pay you for it? And so she just looks at me and she goes, I don't know. Why, you and I make pies together. And I was like, oh my God, that would be so cute. Like, what I saw in my head, I kid you not, was Meg Ryan and You've Got Mail. I'm like her hair is so cute. There's a little lamp in the store. Like, this is what I see. I was such an idiot. So I couldn't look at him and say, I'm going to do that, because I'm a super creative person. And we had tried all sorts of like, maybe we should do this idea, that idea. And so we decided.
Question to interject for a second. Do you feel like when you're going through these thoughts of, well, this is a good idea, why don't we do this? Are you doing this because while you're practicing law at this point, you find it unfulfilling and boring? Or is it your nature to always be the big idea person and thinking about, because if you're self-aware, you'll either know that answer or you're like, that's actually a good question because I never really thought about it. Maybe I just thought that I was just a creative person. But there is that deep-rooted reason why you're thinking that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, I was a super nerd in the 90s. I mean, where did super nerds in the 90s go? It wasn't hip like it is now. Like, you ended up going to law school because you're like, well, now I got a degree. So, like, what am I going to do now? Like, who else is going to let me, like, read and write all day? Well, I'll go to law school. So I never had this illusion that I was going to be like Perry Mason. Like, the thought of, like, going to trial, I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. So I think I was needed something really creative, but I was too young to really know what that
she was always a big idea person. I think she's only kind of grown into that in the past 10 or 15 years.
So really quickly, how long did you practice law before you decided to do the full jump into the Peggy Jean's Pies?
12 and a half years. Yeah, 12 and a half years. And really, when we started the shop, what I saw in my head was, I will be a lawyer / pie baker. Like, that's how dumb I was. I thought, well, how hard can it be?
An excellent multitasker. I mean, let's not discount.
I was doing a very specific type of school law. So my clients were Missouri school districts. And so that afforded me so much freedom because, I rarely saw anyone in person. So I thought, how bad could that be? So we get started, and I had maybe 6 weeks in. We had done a Kickstarter. We didn't borrow money from the bank. We kind of cobbled it together because both he and Mom's husband were like, they have a lot of ideas. Like, nobody was willing to put up a house to finance this because they know our follow through. I mean, in their defense, fully supportive, but also knowing it's very hard for both of us to focus in on one singular idea. So we get kind of started, and I'm going to be this lawyer / pie baker. Oh, and we've got 2 kids in elementary school, and he's working probably 60 hours a week. And I'm going to have all these clients.
I want the audience to also hear this part. Jason, what were you doing before you joined Peggy Jean's Pies?
So for the 16 years leading up to when I joined the family business full-time, I was the director, executive HR at the university here in Columbia, at Mizzou for the healthcare. And so I really led the operational and administrative piece of the human resources for the organization. So I had a lot of experience working in the HR field as well as the IT world. Before that, I'd also worked here in Kansas City. I worked at the Federal Reserve Bank for their automation division. So that's what I was doing prior to this.
Yeah, like super smart in a way that I could never be super smart. Like, I don't think I really understood what he did all day until he got here and started doing some of those things there. And I was like, oh.
He thought I was playing in spreadsheets all day. And I was like.
But he was very successful. And fortunately, and I think this is like an important part of the piece, when people say to me, like, how, people email me from all over the place, like, should I start a business? And I think the important part to really say here is a lot of what I could do is because he is supporting us at home. Like, our lifestyle didn't change. Like, we didn't have to move our houses. Our kids did not have to give up things. So when we get about 6 weeks into Peggy Jean's and I am failing everywhere, like, my clients can tell the shop is taking all of my time. The kids are all weirded out because they're used to me being home. Even our dog, I think, was like, hello, what is going on? Right. And I looked at him and I'm like, do you know all that law school debt we have? I'm going to have to quit and bake pies with Mom. And I kid you not, you could see the color come out of his face like in a slow line. Like, he just went pale. He's like, you better bake so much pies. Because he was like, oh, my God, are you kidding me? At this point, we're both making 6 figures. He's like, we can't really afford that. He's like, you're not going to be able to shop at all, which, spoiler alert, I didn't have any time to shop. So our lives changed in that way.
Yeah.
But then he had to take on the burden of me being a hot mess all the time because I'm working probably 80 hours a week. I'm trying to figure out so many things.
Right.
And then he's worried at home because he's supporting our whole family, which he had not had to do by himself in a long time.
Yeah.
Was it one of those conversations where he said, you know what? I'm a little scared and you better be making a lot of pies, but honey, I support you 100%. Or was it kind of like Justin and I, when he told me to leave my job because he was getting, a volume of cases and he needed me to help him. And I said, absolutely fucking no. There's no goddamn way I'm leaving my job. And, he had to revisit the conversation with me a million times. And it was like, honey, put your big girl panties on. You need to do this. You don't have a choice. And he threw me in the deep end. And that was the end of it. Like, was it a struggle?
I had been skirting around it a little bit. I had said like, oh, I kind of wish I could quit and focus on the shop and the blog. And he's like, we really can't afford it. Like I had been pushing, but when I had like a full breakdown and I was like crying and just like Oprah's full on ugly cry. I was like, I just can't. Like something has to. And now we have this 5-year lease on this space. So it's not like we can close up the shop. Right. Because then we're going to be sued for the remaining balance.
Right.
It was sort of like, as much as it pushed me to make a decision, I then sort of turned around and pushed that all on him. It was like, if you don't want this whole freaking thing over here to tank, because we borrowed the money from his parents to buy the equipment, we signed a lease, we've done all these things. It's like, that's going to tank if we can't get me to focus on it fully.
Yeah, it was really hard for her to be focusing on this new business as well as being like a part-time attorney, so to speak. And I could tell that like it was I'm just like super hard for her to operate in those two very distinct fields. And so when it got to this point, it was like we had to fish or cut bait, and when it just kind of snapped and we're like, okay, then we're going all in and we're going to make it.
Yeah, like he scared me because he's such a, like, he'd always done our finances. Like, if I died, he doesn't know where our laundry room is located. And if he dies, I don't know where our mortgage goes. It just works for us. So when he was like...
Organized chaos, but in a way...
Yes, when he's like, fish or cut bait, but if we're doing it, you better get on it. Like, when he kind of has that directness, I knew, like, there's no margin of error in this.
Right. But let me ask, what took Jason, did you say 7 years before you joined the company?
Mm-hmm. We started
to join you earlier, but he wasn't ready, or was the 7-year an organic? Well, it just seems like this is the time to do it.
I think for him, and he can speak for himself, but from my perspective, he floored me. I was at a trade show in Dallas, and he called me, and I will never forget. My daughter and I are walking across this underpass, this huge freeway to go to this trade show, and he called me, and he's like, I think I'm going to quit and join the shop. And I was like, yellow? What? Like, are you breaking up as the traffic? Like, did I just hear you? And I was shocked.
What was the reason why? Like, what was the impetus?
That's a great question. And I've had 2 years to be thinking about this. But so I was always involved. Like, my nickname used to be behind the scenes tech guru, Jason. So I've always been involved in like helping the business and getting things going and getting all that stuff set up. But, at 7 years in, and I had this big career, I was starting to get kind of bored. This is like, I had a full year of COVID leading in HR.
COVID was a big piece of it.
And they'd switched us to working from home. I just felt like I was giving, working. And it was for somebody else's benefit, whereas this is our family business. Our goal was to have worldwide domination. We had talked about having 2 stores and then 3 stores. And to me, it was just like, it all came together at once. Like, if we're going to make this go big, we've got to make this go big. I want it to go big.
Yeah,
I feel like it's for us.
Yeah, I just remember a lot of those. I would leave in the morning, he's on Zoom. I get home in the afternoon, he's on Zoom. And I could hear some of those conversations, and I would just be exhausted because we were allowed to stay open during COVID. We were an essential we were working our tails off because we were short-staffed. And some days I questioned my life, and I'd come home and I'd hear his conversations on Zoom, and I was like, woof, I mean, whatever, to go back to that, because it was just so much, BS where people add things to the conversation that don't really matter because they feel like they need to say something, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And I just remember he kind of was starting to have a lot of like, what am I doing exactly? Like, what am I contributing to this world exactly? There was a little bit of that starting to go on.
You had the purpose question.
Yes, exactly. I mean, he really
purpose question.
And
I want to ask this because I don't want to forget. How did you guys weather COVID with your business?
We did fantastic.
Jesus.
I mean, that sounds horrible to sell, but we really, I think we're super comforting. People, they wanted to sort of feed those feelings. And if you can go in and something smells like your mom's house used to, and you can buy it and take it home and eat it. And we have a fully open kitchen. So I think a lot of people felt like, okay, well, if I'm going to get something out, at least I can walk in here and I see the people are wearing masks and they have gloves on. And there was zero questioning about what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, we had to adjust like everyone. We added insurance so that one of our employees could start doing deliveries. That's not something we had before. Tons of curbside pickup.
Yeah.
But basically, we had said to our staff, like, if you want to shelter in place, you can. If you want to work, you can. But we knew the exact dollar amount that we had to do every day to justify being open. And literally, those kids that stayed here with me, they would be like, where are we? Have we made it yet today? And then when we make it, we're like, oh, like a busted can of biscuits. We're like, thank God. We'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah. There was a lot of adjustment that he had to really do on the fly, but actually sales kept growing and growing. And so, knock on wood, it was actually a growth period for us.
It's such a weird time. You look back on it, like our oldest kid is as introverted as he is. So he's at home on Zoom, school, whatever. He thinks it's the greatest year of his life because he already hated high school anyway. So who cares? Our youngest one is me. She needs people. So she would literally get up and she would come in here and she would be on Zoom school during the day in my office while I was working. And that's when we had one store. So I don't know, in a weird sort of way, it sounds bad to say, COVID is awful, but there are some silver linings. And I will always think about like that time of when she was with me. And then we pivoted a lot of things. We do a monthly pie tasting party that had always been in store. And I had started to hate it because we'd have to come in here, be here at night. People are drinking. We're going home like 11 o'clock at night. We switched that whole thing to people came and pick up their kits and took it to their house. And to this day, they don't want to go back. We tried to pitch an in-person and tickets didn't really sell because people are like, no, we just love it at home because we can wear our pajamas or we can let our kids be a part of it without buying them a ticket. So there were a lot of things that came out of it that, were not the worst. But then overall, of course, it was just a weird time in everyone's history.
What's your most popular pie?
White chocolate strawberry is our number one seller. Food Network named it one of the best pies in America. So once that happened, it's hardly ever in here. It sells so fast.
How many stores do you have?
We have 2 within early works on a 3rd in St. Louis, which is about 2 hours away. So if you want to talk about real marriage, he's in the shower, I'm brushing my teeth, and we're like talking about a store in St. Louis. Like, that's, I think, what the piece that a lot of people don't think about working with their spouses. I don't know, maybe other people turn it off. Yeah, like we just talk about everything at all of the weirdest times. It's very hard to separate it all.
Well, I'm not letting Jason off the hook yet on to circle back on this. So now you've made the decision, right? You made the decision to join.
You made it in January and gave notice, and you came in March.
Yeah.
I want to know what were some of your, whether you want to call it your best or your worst growing pains as a couple.
I get you first.
So I want to only streamlining this because we only have so much time. So I want to make sure I get the good nuggets that I want. So that's the first thing I want to know from you, where the best or worst, however way you want to couch it. Some people are glasses half full or the glass is empty, growing pains. And then I want to make sure I remember to ask you this. So I'm going to say it now so none of us forget. what has been the best life business lesson you have learned thus far? And I only say it that way because based on our prior guests, some people lump business and life together. They're like, really, honestly, we don't see a difference. So the best lessons and the takeaways we've learned thus far apply both in our personal lives as they do in business. So first, let's tackle the growing pains, and then we'll move on to the takeaways and the life lessons.
My favorite ever is, so he gives notice. He gives them 8 weeks notice to be nice. He comes here, 10 days later, my mom and I get on a plane to go appear on a reality show on Fox, and we live in California for 6 weeks. So he quits.
What reality show was it?
It was Crime Scene Kitchen.
Okay, because I'm such a reality show junkie. It's my guilt.
Joel McHale hosted it. We were literal disasters because nobody in Mid-Missouri knows what a croquembouche is, much less how to make one. So we leave. And he's worked here like 5 days. And I'm like, good luck.
Here you go.
So he's doing pretty good. And man, he called me like at 4 a.m. California time. And there was some tears because he was like, holy crap. Everyone here is annoying me. Our children need all this stuff. We're out of dog food. And we live out in the country, like 30 minutes from town. Like it was everything. And I'm like, hey, do you remember all those days like 5 years ago when I was a super bitch for zero valid reason? Now you get it. I felt so like justified because then I used to be like, I just don't know what's wrong with you. And I'm literally like, it's everything and nothing, but until you lived it, I don't think he got it because he was like, I'm just so pissed and I don't know how to any of it. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. Yeah. I'm aware. I know. I'm out here in the California right now trying to win us $100,000, which I did not. But whatever. That's my favorite because I think he finally for a second, I think he knew, but to me, it felt like he got it. But I'm just speaking for him.
Yeah. So if I don't think that's my biggest lesson, actually. If I stop and I say.
But we're not talking about lessons here. We're talking about what was the biggest, like the growing pains of when you first started and you guys are still working out the kinks of working with your spouse and living with your spouse. And
we're totally different. Totally different.
I feel like there's several, so I'll just kind of go over the highlights. So number one, working with your spouse, as you all know, like before we'd had years, like she would do her thing during the day. We had talked through the day, but we're not talking like all the time during the day. One of the biggest things was, when we're at work now, we're talking all the time. So when we get home, what do you talk about? Mm-hmm. We've already talked about everything already. So the whole work-life balance really became very blurred. Sorry?
This is like you get home and you're like, well, I saw you 12 minutes ago. What's new?
Yeah. And you can't complain about her at work because.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's helped that we have 2 stores, but still, we're together all the time.
Another big one that's taken me a long time is, when I was leading the HR for where I used to work, you have different areas and different teams that do different things. Well, when you're a small business, you are the different teams and the different departments that do all the things. So literally before this interview, I was working on our SEO on Google search engine. And then after this, I'm going to be working on some like sales projections. And then I'll probably go wait on a couple of customers and then, pay a few bills. So, that's one of the biggest learnings for me, but also it's kind of one of the best things I like because you get to do it all. There's nothing ever boring here.
Well, you get to do it all, and you also become not necessarily a master of all things, but it becomes beneficial. And I can only speak for this because we're in the same shoes, that when you're in the growth stage like we are, and we're now up to, well over, 10 employees, if you add people that are working virtually, part-time, all of our team members, you're not in the dark. You can then say to everybody, I've done your job and I've done your position. I know it well. So, you can never say, what does he know? They didn't do. We did. We totally.
Yeah, I'll be like, don't even try to tell me like how many pies you think I've made. Or like, he'll get frustrated with me because I won't schedule someone on the front from like in a 2-hour block because I'm like, why would I pay somebody to do it when I'm the best at it? And he's like, that's not how that works. You have other things you need to be doing. Mm-hmm. So I'll complain a lot, like, I've got nothing done because I've been working on the table so much. And he's like, well, you're the one that scheduled it that way.
We really do balance each other. I don't think she ever had the perspective of her time is actually better served strategically focusing on how do we grow the brand and how do we grow the business and what are the new products, because she's so in the trenches sometimes that she just wants to get on the front line and like, get out of my way. I can do this faster.
Yeah, I think that's too. Thank you.
Overwhelmed, I can switch to controlling super fast and be like, just get out of my space. I will just do it myself. And he's like, that's not how that works. He'll say to me all the time, you need to say, here is my expectation. And I'm like, are you effing kidding me? Like, we're just totally different people that way. He's a much calmer. Everything is backed by data, whereas for me, everything is like in my heart. So I'm either like hell yes or hell no, without a lot of room for negotiation. And he's like running behind me with a spreadsheet, being like, "Well, did you look at what the data said?" And I'm like, "That's taking adjustment."
I think guys are also better with the gray areas, which is what we
100%.
see, because sometimes the gray areas. For example, if it comes to, taking risks, and I think that women, well, at least I was a little bit more risk averse, Justin can see the gray areas, which then, when you're able to take more risks, and I can only say that we do that because of him.
Thank you.
Whether hold on.
Here's the but.
And I know that his gray areas are backed by data, let's say.
There's no data.
But the point is that we're able to jump and, take a lot more risks because of him. And sometimes it really pays off great. So that, with that, I think it's a great segue because, we've got probably 5-10 minutes. I really want to talk about the life lessons because, for everybody that's listening, the point of ReLAWtionship is, what people really don't want to talk about is how do you deal with conflict. So that's one thing you can talk about in like a couple of minutes. And then the grand finale, which is, the big takeaways and lessons learned. If you can address those two things, that would be amazeballs.
Yeah. I mean, conflict is so hard. It's like you have ironed out. I mean, we've been married, 21 years before we started doing this together. So we've ironed out a lot of that at home stuff that made us mad at home or stuff about our kids. And then you roll into this and it's just like unlocking a portal to the next level of stuff that pisses you off.
Right.
So
it's all compounded. So how do you deal with it? What has been you can either, what's the secret sauce? Are you still at that stage where you're like, shit if we know? Or 100% found the better way of dealing with
me, I have to talk about it. Even if I'm if you're going to make me mad, I would rather be mad because we're having a conversation. He will tend to very much shut down, don't want to talk about it. And I will push like picking a scab. I'll be like, no, we just have to solve it. Just say whatever you think. So that, I don't know if it helps or not. It's much harder for him. I will say everything I'm thinking, and he'll be like, well, I would tell you this, but I just know this is going to make you mad.
She's you can tell. I'm more of the introvert. She's the extrovert. So she gets very loud and very emotive when she's got a feeling or a thought. So I would say we have not freaking figured it out yet, but I think that we're learning. I know how to give her that space to let her have that, loud response. Yeah. And let it be okay, even though it's not easy for me, and vice versa. I
don't know if anybody can ever solve it. I'm not good at things that I don't like things that have an endpoint. So if we wrapped this all up nicely and we were we come here every day and we never fight, I'd probably be like, well, I don't like that. I'd probably pause a fight because I want the next thing rolling down at me. So it's like we have 2 stores. We do very, very well. What should we do? Hell, or add a 3rd store.
Yeah.
If we don't fight for like a week, I'm the first one trying to paw around and be like, well, now I'm kind of irritated.
We don't do well with status quo. Like we're not good with status quo.
Complacency
It's boring.
is boring, and it almost seems like unless there's chaos, you're not working towards something. If you're not fighting, then there's no conflict. And if there's no conflict, how can you be trying new things or trying to get to a certain goal or destination? Because all of those things are part of the journeys that people don't think about. They don't address. And they look at it as a sign of either failure or something is wrong rather than a sign of health and movement and progress.
I completely agree.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm a big, I like people that are always sort of inwardly thinking and sort of like thinking about themselves and how they want to change and grow. And I just don't know how you can keep changing and growing and not fight with the person you're sharing that with 100%. Sometimes.
100%.
Because if he's going to be honest with me about things that I'm doing, or if I'm honest with him, like, what's the real motivation behind, like, why you want to do that? We had that conversation last week.
Yeah, we did.
He was like, maybe I could do this for other businesses. And I'm like, wait a second, do you really want the money or do you want the accolades that you're good at it? Like, those are hard conversations to have.
Yeah.
But I think if you are evolving as a person, you have to have somebody.
Oh, if the answer is yes to both, there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
Because that's our personal journey, and our purpose can be met with a different check marks and different buckets. So, now this is we got to wrap this up. So, to be all, what is the best lesson learned takeaway that you guys have come up with or realized
when working with your spouse?
When working, in life and business.
In life,
in
business.
It's not about just working with yourself, but what is the number one takeaway lesson learned?
I know for me, like, we turned 9 yesterday. And when people say to me, like, owning a business or working with your spouse, the only thing that I feel like I've learned that has changed me is I do not give up on this. It is going to suck some days. Like, I have to go into it knowing, like, some days are going to be awful and some days are going to be so rewarding. Like, some days it just requires, like, you put your head down and you just hold on to it. And that has kind of helped me, like, when we're struggling here or if he and I are fighting, to be like, giving up does not exist as an option on the table. So adjust my expectations to know that, some days are going to be really, really hard. And some days will come back and reward you for that. And a lot of the days on the in-between are going to be so mundane. That's all okay. But I did not come this far to give up on because something is annoying or trying or stupid or whatever. Like, I guess I'm just not ever looking for the, like, so many people are like, oh, if I can just get out of it and never work there, or if I can just do this or do that. I try to be like, this is what I do right now. And if I can just hold on to that, then when you start looking at that big picture across the spectrum, you see how much has changed. But when you were in it, it felt like nothing was ever changing. But it is. Everything's evolving and growing. It's just, I think there's a lot of pressure in our society to be like, well, if you're the CEO, you should have a jet and you should have a country house and you should have a lake house and you shouldn't have to be there. So if you just choose to sort of lose focus with that and sort of focus on one solitary thing, this is what our focus on. This store is our 3rd kid. We can't give up on it. We don't give up on our other 2, and they annoy the hell out of us sometimes. I mean, if they're your parent and you're like, my kids don't annoy me, you're
lying.
That's just parenting.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is just our 3rd kid. This is just it. We're just all here, even when they're difficult.
I'd say the thing that my takeaway has been, one thing that I didn't anticipate going into business full time with my wife was that there's really a work person and then there's like my wife person, and our personalities are different when we're at work. Like, I didn't realize the extent of her work style until I was here every day. The ups and the downs and the very loud and I'm used to more of a controlled environment, working in HR, and like, this is how we have meetings. A meeting to her, you could not get her to show up to a meeting. There'll be no meetings in a corporate PJP. She's already said, we're not going to have meeting rooms or conferences, no like employee surveys. So getting to know and appreciate the fact that her work style is so different, and actually appreciate the fact that's probably why we can be so successful, is because she's got this idea, this is her work style, brand, but I can come in behind and make it operational and make it financially feasible and create the analytics so we can actually build the bridge to where we're going. So I think just appreciating doesn't mean I like it all the time, because it does cause a lot of fights sometimes, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I do. And trusting, like, I haven't looked at our bank account in, I don't know, like 17 years at home. I don't even know where it's at. And I don't look at it here. And we've had a business consultant before be like, why are you not looking? I trust him. That is his strong suit. I don't want to look at the bank account. If he says yes to something, that means that we can do that. If he says no, that I fully believe that he's really thought through that, and no, that's not something we can do. And that applies at home and it applies here. So I think that takes an insane amount of trust that maybe is like sometimes antithetical for people that feel like they need to be all in every little piece. But if I let him do his thing that he's good at and I do the thing that I'm good at, then why would I sit there and look at QuickBooks with him? I don't want to do that. And he doesn't want to like get on Facebook and look at stuff with me. Learning to know the other person's strength and trust that and not feel threatened by it, I think is a big piece. And that's probably really hard if you're young and married. That takes time.
Right.
You have to kind of mature into that.
Yeah, we didn't get to that point until several years into our business. So I love that you guys said that, because all the different things that you just said really touch on us. And so I really want to thank you guys for speaking my language. I love it. And I can't wait to taste one of your pies.
Hey, we'll ship them right to you.
I'm so excited. But it was such a joy and such a pleasure to talk to you guys. I wish that we actually had more time, but doing this in the middle of our workday as well, like, that's another difficult thing is time management. But I hope to God, we can circle back, maybe at another time so we can kind of continue the conversation with you guys.
100%. We would love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everything, for your time. And it was so nice to meet you guys.
That's a wrap for this week's episode. Don't miss next week's episode for more relatable, real, and practical insights from ReLAWtionship, packed with even more candid conversations. So make sure to subscribe, tune in, and keep your wine glass full. And if you want to share your own experience or ask a question, follow us on social media and feel free to reach out. Go to CernitzLaw.com, call 888-68-DAMAGE, or email us at cshanbron@CernitzLaw.com or jcernitz@CernitzLaw.com.